There is no better value than compounding word of mouth. So if you spent as much time sitting down trying to think about how to get people to talk about you as you did trying to like get the sale, you'd probably actually blow up.
Hey, how's it going? It's Tim Brown, and this is the HVAC and Plumbing Hustle podcast. And today we're talking to garage doors because this is really a home service podcast. I'm talking to Mike Venidis of Good Golly Garage Doors. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, man. Never been better. Thanks for inviting me to come on to your show and talk a little shop and see how we can help the industry.
And you're a marketer starting a home service business. I'm guessing you have some ideas about how this could be done better than your average one. So I really want to pick your brain about what you're doing differently than what you've seen in the past and why you think it's important. Can you just give the 3-minute version of kind of what you're into now and like a little bit of your background?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that's kind of what really encouraged, my wife and I to start this whole journey from the start is exactly what you said. Like, we have some advantages, we have some unique perspectives, and it would be really fun to see what we can do with this thing, given our experience and our history within the home services. And, for those that do not know me, I spent 15 years, growing a reputable digital marketing agency called Rhino. We saw this massive opportunity, to partner up with a friend who had a vision for garage doors. And the business model is not your conventional model, and it was an opportunity for, my wife and I to enter entrepreneurship and put to use like all the things that we've taught for the years. So what better way than to truly grow and gain experience, than to go actually apply your theories and your strategies to a business of your own and see almost like a science experiment, how does it respond? So, when you told me you were interested to have this conversation about like, what are those theories? What are those strategies? I thought, man, this could be really fun. Yeah, man, I mean, like it's going to be interesting for sure. Where do we start? But,
Yeah, I think like what were some of the things that you first thought you're like, okay, I've seen this done poorly. We have we could create an arbitrage. Like, what were those things? We're like, I think this is like a couple pieces that are missing on businesses like this that we could nail.
Yeah, well, I think the first one is going to be kind of the obvious, and that's a strategy. I think like a lot of home service companies, they start off in the field and they kind of figure it out as they go. And our approach here it's more of a white collar approach. Like we did the data analysis, we did the assessment, like an example, if I'm using our Phoenix location, as we get ready to go to market here, doing, an entire assessment of the location that we want to serve is essential, right? Like, did we make the effort to go out and look at Census Bureau data? Did we figure out our avatar and our demographic? Did we look at what we want our average home value to be, salaries, income, age of garage door? And did we actually analyze the entire location to see where we have the most ideal prospects? Did we compare that to the amount of competition also, located conveniently to those service areas, right? Because in our world, one digital marketer to another, we understand location proximity and what that advantage is like for a home service company when you play around with, Google and mapping algorithms and things of that nature. So for us, that was like an essential part of everything. We sat down and we looked at things like what we wanted our net margin to be with our business partner, Jason Henderson. We looked and strategized how could we, leverage a multi-location brand, that is going to grow nationally to negotiate and reduce the cost of our rates, like with Clopay, as a distributor. Like, all of those things were thought of and discussed, and we haven't even opened our doors yet.
Still a lot of money chasing these transactions. There's still really good outcomes out there for sellers. It's good to have someone like us in your corner because we're not emotional, but guess what? When you're selling your business, it becomes emotional, and so it's really good to have an intermediary, there every step of the way. www.sfpadvisors.com. All the contact information is directly on the website.
When are you opening your doors, by the way?
Right now, we are aiming for next month,
Okay.
sitting in our nice new office space.
Yeah, I saw a little tour. It's like it looks slick though. You're not coming out like I think that that's one thing. You come out of the gate. A lot of people come out of when I started this business, my agency, like I came out of the gate with a little fizzle. I'm like, I'm a freelancer on my own, and then 4 months later, I hired my wife, and then like a year later, I hired like I'm more of a fizzle. Well, and I was like, because I didn't have the confidence to just be like, I'm hiring 7 people. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, and or the capital, right? So I think like it's a little bit different if you have some starting capital, if you have a business part, whatever, however you guys are doing that. It's like there's just an opportunity if you can skip forward a few years because you don't have to do those first 3 years on hard mode. If you can get like I think a lot of home service businesses, a couple $100,000 can skip you ahead a couple years.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, I mean, listen, there's a million ways to play the game, and for my wife and I, Jacqueline and I, we've always had it on our checklist to enter entrepreneurship. And when we look at our life plan, it was more of a exploration in our 40s. I'm 38 today, she's 33. Um, and I think it's just some people will spend their lives exploring leadership and gaining experience and developing a network to be able to have that upside and that advantage. And that's all that it is, right? Like we took a different approach. Some people dive in and they figure it out as they go. We were blessed. We found a way to go all in, and put in those 12-hour days and treat an agency as if we owned it and we learned everything that we could. And then we were very blessed to be in rooms with a lot of extremely massive talent, successful entrepreneurs that have grown it, they've sold it, and those connections continue to bless us to this day. We had great mentors, right? Like along the way as we scaled that agency. So like when you have that network and you have investors and you have people that have already vetted you out and they've seen you do the work, over the 15 years in the industry, those are advantages, those are upsides. So it's going to be fun to play this game a little bit differently,
Yeah. You
and
just kind of like your outfit. I always think like you're outfitting your character in like a video game. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
you get different things. And I keep talking to my employees like this too. It's like you just want to get skills. Like it doesn't. Let's say AI is harder. It makes marketing either harder or easier. We don't know what it's going to do in the next 5 years. It's getting weird. But in the meantime, look for skills that are like robust and serious. Like leadership is one, communication is one, sales is one. Like in addition to your PPCs and your SEOs and your AEOs or whatever, what skills can I have so that the next thing I play, the next game, is like I've got all these. You got all this equipment, these abilities. And I think like you're going into this with so many more abilities because you played and you've gotten your skills way up from the work that you've done, and you've also gotten your reputation way up, which is like more valuable than gold, right? So the ability to leverage that to create, I don't know, just like I'm using that in this new roofing company that I'm making. I'm using that to get deals on stuff, frankly, because I'm trying to be scrappy. So I'm like, I'm going to use my YouTube over here to get deals on that. And like, I'm just trying to make it cheap first year so that I can, and plus use all these tools. There's like 5 to 7 tools that are out the gate I just want to have that are really good that a lot of people would not do that until later. But if I can leverage my network and my that type of stuff. So I'm guessing you're doing some of that too.
well, absolutely. I mean, there's a mixture of things, right? Like there's of course the network, which I think just expedites the rate in which you can figure things out, right? Like over the years, what I've learned is yes, like a skill is essential, and I think that our ability to make the phones ring and generate leads is definitely raised our value and our worth, and the interest of the different operators in our network, the Good Golly network, to really want to bring Jacqueline and I in, to the holding company in addition to opening Phoenix, Arizona. Because we're a national brand. So being able to assist every location with our expertise as a marketer is obviously a value add. that did play a role. But if there's anything that I've learned, like working with entrepreneurs, the things that they tend to appreciate the most, especially when you're looking for C-suite of executives or just leadership qualities, is it's the basics, man. That's just my opinion on that, right? Like, access to a network, the ability to have great character, have an impact, develop connections, be likable, that's a superpower within itself, because if you can arrange the right team, you really don't have to have this superb skill. And then there's an element where I am just fortunately blessed, like my wife is the opposite. I'm a who person. If you've ever read Who Not How by Ben Hardy, and you know, um, I can do the network thing. I can arrange a team. I can inspire a room, and I can do the work too. But the thing is like you asked me, I'd rather be out doing this with you, getting to know you, developing a connection with you than, sitting at home and deciphering code and figuring out an algorithm, you know. And I've done that. I've had my years. You got to do what you got to do. That's just what it takes in entrepreneurship or leadership in general. But my wife is a how person, and we offset our strengths so well that that's an upside too, playing into that. So, I think
We
there's all
could go
kinds of
into the wife business partner thing for a second. I've
yeah, you can
I've
relate
done
to
it.
me in that one too then.
I've done it. There are drawbacks and strengths.
Yeah,
I would love to hear a little bit of why, because
for
you
sure.
you guys have worked together in the past with the last company, but like that's
Yeah,
a
7 years.
decision to go in together on this business. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple of things to consider in that topic is, one, like I met my wife almost right before I started working at Rhino, and she eventually came on too for 7 out of those 14 years. And there's for sure a dynamic. We were blessed because there wasn't a long period of time that we had to like actually report to each other. We did a pretty good job at like running separate lanes. Like I did just about every role in the company, but when she came in, we were sizable enough to where I was responsible for all of the clients, the relationships, the CSMs, AMs, whatever you want to call them, all the account representatives, and she was more responsible for the actual digital strategy. Um, so there would be funny things where you'd go home and you'd have our SEO debates at dinner because I had built some of the initial strategies with Anna, and then Jacqueline has a little bit of a different take, and we all know there's a million ways to play the SEO game, right? So there's for sure some spats that happen. It's kind of funny. I tease people as, man, if you sit at the dinner table with Jacqueline and I, you just laugh, because we're just having SEO debates to like total geeks. But I will tell you this, man, like, because I try to give practical things to audiences. Like I'm pretty big on trying to give value. And I think one of the hacks that Jacqueline and I did that I really would inspire every single husband wife team to do is lean into your strengths. Not everyone's going to be blessed and have the opposition like we are, but like we use Chat GPT to create a 1A, 1B model. That was something, that Gary Vee actually taught us during our time at Rhino is figure out when she gets to break the tie, right? And when I get to break the tie. And what you do is you eliminate so much of the emotional disagreement because you have a playbook. Like we had ChatGPT build out our responsibilities, and if we didn't see eye to eye in certain areas of the business, whoever was listed as the 1A in that particular area had the final say. So it was a pre-negotiated way in your husband-wife relationship to say, look, I don't agree with you on this one. I'm not going to throw it in your face when you're wrong, but we know that this is your decision at the end of the day. And that was a game changer for us.
Yeah, I we had more strain the first couple of years when it was just us and a couple other people, and then as soon as we could in the last 3 years, it's 9 years, so you can do some math there. But we kind of split it out. Like really, we don't have as much overlap on response. As soon as you can make it so there's not as much overlap on responsibilities, it's not romantic all the time, but it is on the positive side. I always say this is like the positive side is you have so much context on what they're going through, so you can have empathy. You can your dinner table conversation or walk. You're taking a walk with them. You can talk about things that they actually care about. When she worked at a corporation back in the day, we didn't care about
Yeah.
each other's work stories.
It's interesting to me because we do. I had to tread lightly because I know that when people consume this type of content, like the first thing they do is they kind of compare, you know. And I think it's important to call out like that. Jacqueline and I, we don't have kids, so our ability to go all in is there. It's I think this is a lot harder, right? Like when you got a family to take care of, and you start to assess the risk that is attached to it, and the stress and the weight that comes within that. So I think it's important to call that out because it's important to me to also make sure that any husband wife team doesn't feel disrespected by the things that I say because we're not the same. It's not apples to apples. I also think it's important to call out that you know Jacqueline and I are also like ridiculously obsessed with business. It's all we think about. Like when we walk the dog, that's what we talk about. We literally ask like, what do you think was one thing we could have did better today? You know, what was one thing that we feel like we crushed, and we reflect, together. And we almost view business as like a hobby. For many years, like building Rhino together was like that's all we talked about. And it got to a point where we had to pre-arrange like on our monthly date nights that we weren't going to talk about it. And it wasn't because it was bad. It was just because we knew like, hey, this, like, even though this is what we love and this is what makes us happy, we got to tread lightly here, because it's a dangerous game to play, right? Like you could grow apart over time, and I think that the other thing I'll call out is, if there's anything that I've realized in the last 30 to 60 days, like as we've transitioned into entrepreneurship, is our marriage was built upon wanting each other. Like everything that we've built, in our marriage it was very much like we chose to be together. We didn't have to, from how we manage our finances to how we, divide our time. We were strategic in the sense, and now, like, what this business has made us realize is, like, we actually need each other. There's a difference to choose and want each other versus to legitimately need each other to get by. Like, I'll be the first to say that I probably would not have taken this risk or considered this opportunity if she was not a part of it. I mean, she was such an essential, she was like the primary driver of, like, hey, what if we did this? I mean, and that was what caused me to stop and go, how freaking cool would it be, like after we get this thing going, like that's kind of wild. Like if I was writing a book or watching a movie, I mean, to have a 15-year digital marketer completely 180 and jump sides on the fence to just kind of be able to relate to the contractor more and be in their shoes, like that's pretty cool. And if anybody's ever seen any of my previous content in any podcast, they know how passionate I am for this industry, man. And it's, we all know, like, we don't have to get into the shooting. It's on every single podcast, but like that shooting, it adds this whole traumatic experience and this emotional driver into the blue collar industry. And like, it's the industry that I fell in love with because it gave me a second chance to like feel alive. So when you start to apply that type of passion to things.
For anyone that hasn't heard the story before, will you give a brief version of it?
Yeah. I mean, the short version was I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, in downtown Phoenix. Like we were attending an art walk and an attempted robbery went sideways, and I ended up getting shot twice by a 13-year-old child who was doing gang affiliation, and they just left me there in the park like throughout the night. So things got way more serious than they had to be, due to being just there throughout the night. And in that recovery process, it was where I 180'd out of a frontman musical journey into digital marketing. I mean, I was simply just trying to pay medical bills. Like it was a temporary contracted role. And
What kind of music did you play, bro?
just kind of went from there,
What kind of music?
It was a rock and roll band back
I
in the
see
day.
you like Deftones, I think was one of your favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Is it like rock like that, like gritty rock kind of stuff?
Yeah, so Deftones, I definitely have an obsession. Been a loyal fan since, gosh, man, probably since the around the Fur days, mid '90s.
Oh yeah, the good
But
old
my
days.
music days were a little bit more of the screamo.
Oh, okay, fuck yeah, dude. Oh, I love screamo. It's funny because it's kind of having its resurgence right now, and I never really left my screamo. I mean, yes, it's uncool. It was uncool for some time to like be super into screamo, but I've always loved screamo, and I think It's fun to watch it come back a little bit, like on the younger people finding out about all these bands and stuff like that. It's cool. It's
Well,
very cool.
like what I've observed is that it seems to align with the clothing trend.
Yeah, I
You
can
ever
see that.
notice that?
Yeah,
Like,
because now they're coming back to like the wide legs and stuff like that. And it's like, first of all, I'm not going. I'm not coming. I'm not at a certain point. I'm not coming back to the, like the. I just I'm not going to go in and out on the legs for the rest of my life. I'm just choosing basic. I'm not doing it. That's how you become a dad. You
yeah.
know, like the dad. I'm done following the leg on the jeans trend.
Yeah, man, come on, Jinkos. They're coming back. You could go
I
get
mean,
yourself
I
a pair.
loved them at the time. I remember I had a friend, my buddy. It was great. My buddy was in dance, and he was like the one out of like three out of like 100 people that were dudes.
Yeah.
And so he just cleaned up, and it was very positive, like for our lives, because I'd go to these girls, and we're the only boys there, so it was so fun. But I remember one year I showed up and I had my like Jinko pants on, and my buddy like pulls me aside. He's like, "Dude, what are you doing?" You know, because this is like an Abercrombie crowd or whatever, and I was wearing my Jinkos, and I was like, I never felt more alive and more rebellious in that moment for him to be like, "What are you doing, dude? What is this? This is crazy. Get
Yeah,
those out of here." You know, like it
yeah,
was a fun time where he's like, if you were one of the kids that was doing the wide legs and no one else was, you were like this pariah, this badass.
yeah. I mean, the Gothic kids. I mean, I remember all those things very vividly, and and here's the thing, man. Is like the screamo thing came a little bit after that '90s crowd, so it might not be cool right now, but before you know it, give it another 10 years, and maybe this alpaca haircut will turn into
Oh,
the emo
I
one eye.
they did cut. I mean, like My Chemical Romance, for instance. I know that was on the tail end of all that,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's back. Like people like realized that was really good. I think they did a good thing by just stopping. Like they didn't sit there and put out five more bad albums. They just had like two or three or whatever, and then they're just done. I feel like that's a hack.
Yeah, I remember seeing them on the tiny stage outside of it was a Vans Warped Tour, and they did like a very small stage in front of like 15 people. It was kind of cool to see that, and
It's
then
crazy.
put it in.
That's so fun.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, very fun.
Um, Give me a few more things that you're like, I'm doing, and I'm selfishly saying for myself because I'm learning. I have a few things I'm trying to do that I think will be really good for my roofing company that I'm building. That you feel like if you have things like that, you're like, I saw this while I was marketing home service businesses. I told people to do it and they didn't do it, and now I'm gonna. Like,
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of things I'll say. Like one thing I'm toying around with right now is lead aggregators. And I know that there's a lot of divisive opinions about it. Like I've never been a fan of buying leads. But what I think is interesting in the artificial intelligence space specifically, and I've talked a lot about this on other podcasts about like political relationships in some of these different AI platforms like Perplexity, ChatGPT, even Gemini too, right? And when you start to pay attention, like where the politics are, it gets interesting to me. And I'll use ChatGPT as an example. Like a lot of the data analysis that I did in my agency days, I would sit up at night and just do search after search after search, and I would tally how many times a particular reputation management platform showed up for each of the different trades. And I started to analyze this trend on Chat GPT, and the one that always stood out the most that I've been talking about for the last year was Thumbtack,
mm,
which it is. Like it's a lead aggregator. It's you buy leads off of it. And while this is typically something that I see businesses do when they're in the greenfielding process young because they don't have that name and they haven't really been established, what I actually see is that a lot of the way AI is making suggestions for home service companies is based upon reputation management because ChatGPT specifically doesn't understand location proximity, which is a ranking factor in Google Maps, as we both know. So when I start to look at the reputation management platforms that they're using to consider the suggestions that they make on these platforms, it makes me say, well, maybe lead aggregators and purchasing from some of these platforms like Angie and thumbtack isn't necessarily a bad idea after all. And while I'm not a fan of outbound and chasing leads and, some of the additional work that goes into it, what I am a fan of is the fact that they do have their own reputation management platforms. And that is going to offset and help you stand out as the suggested
Yeah.
GPT answer,
I
right?
always told people to join those things, but not. It doesn't mean you have to like buy tens of thousands of dollars of leads from them. You can be on their platform, get some reviews, and then you don't have to like basically that doesn't need to be your main way to get leads.
For sure. Yeah, and I definitely don't want your audience to perceive that I'm saying that's the main way. Like I definitely don't think, right? Because you're paying for a lead, right? Like general ROI, like if you were going to ask me what my number one lead source would be, it's free. It's everything organic that I possibly can do. So I'm pretty relentless about social media, as we all know. Like I'll literally post every single day and it's really just value add. I mean, I genuinely just try to help people all day every day, and if I manage to strike a heart chord, it's me, and I happen to be wearing a brand right now. And my hope is that if I try to help you every single day for free, when you just happen to need some help, I'll be the guy you call. Like I think of things like that. Like, what are the free things you can do? So other things I would tell you, right, is like, how active are you in Reddit? How active are you in Quora? I mean, these things don't cost anything, and all you need to do is just go into these human forums and engage, just help. Like, did you sign up for your local community? Did you go into Vegas locals? Did you find that there's a subreddit for garage doors or roofing? And
Mm.
you spend 10 minutes a week just going in there and answering questions for people and being genuinely helpful. Because I'll tell you what, like, if they trust you, they're probably going to start to actually research your profile, where it's very easy to put the link to your business. And they're probably even going to respect you 100 times more that you didn't try and sell them a thing. You just actually helped them on a public platform. And then what are you going to do when you actually start to rank? Because your answer is what Google is showing, right? Like in the Q&A snippets that they're starting to give leverage to because of the antitrust trial, right? It's another thing I tell people is like pay attention to who's suing who. I just talked about this the other day. Like Perplexity is, there's Reddit suing Perplexity and, all kinds of things that are going on there.
Yeah, just to both of you and I would say the same thing about the Reddit and Quora thing. By the way, I've already been engaging just the last few months on both of those platforms related to my company, my new home service business. Before it's even launched, I'm engaging to season the pot, and it's tapping those sources and like yeah, like you're saying, like backwards engineer what's being referenced, like backwards engineer on AI, like the next few years, it always feels like it's going this way, but it's like the next few years has got to get a lot more human with SEO and marketing stuff. It's you can do things that an agency can't do. Like an agency, it's very hard for us to go and engage on Reddit for you. Like, and hell, I'll try. I'll try, but I'm saying like it's very hard to authentically engage in that way. So I think just people noting that there are certain things it's very hard to do as an outside company, and you can do it now. And there's even if you, and this might seem like spam to you, Mike. I don't know if you feel this way. I'm saying how I feel. If somebody's asking about a company in your area that does what you do, and that thread's old, but it's at the top and it's getting referenced, you can plead your case in those comments. Now Reddit, if you aren't, it's not in a seasoned account. If it's not in a seasoned account, you could get like spammed real quick and taken the stuff getting taken down. But if you've got a seasoned account and you're engaged in both Quora and Reddit, so it's like do your back work on these accounts to make sure that you can respond when it's time for real stuff. So that's dude, AI is in certain ways super complicated, but in other ways it's like what is it referencing and be there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like my whole theory on it, I'm very strategic. It's a strength of mine. I'm an idea guy. And those are the things that I think make AI a little bit easier, like and simple for me. But the complex parts that I think are more intimidating is when you start to get into code, and you start to try and set up integrations and create automations. And I think it'll always still come full circle back to some of the core fundamentals of like SOPs, like we could talk about that for a second. Everybody talks about building SOPs for your business. And I think that's essential, right? Because great businesses continue to operate and exist even after the founder exits, goes on vacations, whatever it is, right? Good businesses fall apart when they go. Um, and what I think about the problem is like, even though you want to document all your processes, it still trains your team to be mindless too, right? Because if I'm following the step by step, I don't really have to put thought into it. And the problem is when you're building scalable businesses, right? Like not everybody cares about it as much as you do. And when you have entry level employees that aren't passionate, right? Now what we have here is somebody who just wants to read an SOP and they don't actually make an effort. So some of these things are like they're applicable to how AI works as well. What I worry about is that we're going to abuse AI to this extent to where it becomes mindless because we expect it to do everything on automation. And what happens is quality diminishes. So I think it's going to be an interesting 5-year stint here because it's growing at rates that none of us can honestly fathom. Like it's going to go faster than you would expect. And I think it's going to get interesting fast because what I think is you're going to see a divisive group of people that lean into it heavily, and they try to optimize their business by reducing the amount of time it takes to execute so that they can increase profit margins. But I also think that you're going to have, a group of entrepreneurs that go a different way. And I'm not saying that they'll avoid AI. I'm not saying that they won't use it, but I think that they're going to make strategic decisions to make sure that the customer service and the human-esque relationship building element is forefront and center.
Mm.
And I think that they will lean into that and they will advertise that because when society becomes so ingrained into AI, right, it's like a pendulum. Quote that I always say is opposition creates balance. And once we've hit this amount of AI, like we're going to long for connectivity. So it's something that I look at like very cautiously, when the concept of AI starts to come up and we start to explain it, talk about it, how it works. Well, I'll tell you right now, like I'll put it on the record because I want everybody to hear it loud and clear. Like this whole fear mongering SEO is dead BS is like it's very, very simple. The game just got harder, The way AI works, it needs SEO. It needs the hard work of SEOs and what they do to be able to function. Like it's not. It's to me the analogy I always use is it's kind of like an attorney. Like in my mind, knowing what I know about AI, there's no one more qualified than an SEO expert to try and influence or impact what the artificial intelligence is going to do in the world of buyer psychology.
You know what? That's a good topic. Let's veer off into this for a second. AEO or GEO as a part of SEO, or do you think it's a different thing? Like, and part of it is what's been driving this for me is like I can feel that our customers, contractors, want to buy AEO and GEO, and so yes, I'm going to like offer that as a service. It may be within SEO, but it's hard to say. Is it the same? Is the real question? Is it the same?
Man, my theory on this is that it's not so much that they're separate. I mean, they are. I want to think about the best way to word this. To me, it's more of an external concept. Like it's segregated in the sense that people will utilize it and purchase and select who they work with differently. But conceptually, what you're doing is the same. So if I was to like articulate that, it's my way of saying it's still SEO. Like you're still doing SEO. You're just changing your prioritization and how you spend your time in that day-to-day SEO to impact what is a different strategy, in AEO, GEO, whatever the industry wants to call it. In my mind, like the things that you're doing are still the same. Like you still need to write content. You just have to change your tone and how you write it. Like you still need to generate directories and you still need to manage them and you still need to drive reviews. Like all of these things are the same things we're doing in SEO today. It's just now you have platforms that are not Google that rank them and show them differently based upon what they believe is the priority in the algorithm. It doesn't change what you have to do. It just changes how you do it. So in my mind, it gets harder. It gets harder for guys like you. Like I think what happens is you kind of have to do twice the work, and it all kind of depends. Like if Gemini and ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude, if they continue to take the market share, you've got to keep Google happy because of how much it has, but you also need to keep these platforms happy. So in a way, like the game got harder because we now have to be mindful of five different, you know, uh, information generative systems rather than the one that had 93%. That's how I would say it. That's how I would put it. It's just my personal stance on it.
Yeah, I wasn't sitting there thinking about Bing as much back in the day. Like, but now I feel like we have a real contender. I mean, like just thinking about AI is one. It like helps me even just to like not get overwhelmed thinking of it as like one contender. Even if it's at 5%, and that seems low to me. It's been and Google's down to like 87 or something. Like who knows who's making these numbers, but the thing is the toughest part is that clicks on ChatGPT clicks are down on Google by a long shot, and clicks are not. There's only 1% of the internet's traffic right now is coming from AI search engines or ChatGPT at least. So thinking about the lack of clicks. Oh, I missed the clicks.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the zero click era,
Yeah,
and that's here's the thing. Like, I think that at the end of the day, we're trying to predict who's going to win this race. There's two. I think there's two key components. Actually, I'll say three. I mean, I think component number one is like how is advertising going to roll out into these platforms?
yeah, coming
Because
soon.
AI is even harder to control than SEO. I think it's harder to police too, right? Because it accustoms to the user. And when you have every individual user seeing a different result, like it always cracks me up when people go, "Oh yeah, my AI suggested me."
Yeah,
Well, if you knew how it worked, there's probably a strong chance it's probably going to do that, knowing it gets to know you. But I think that's number one is that how are ads going to come out and come into that space. I think number two that we need to be very very mindful of is who is going to be the front runner, right? It's a race. Like who's going to be the next Google is what everybody is really saying. And we often talk about everybody but Google. Nobody wants to talk about how, hey, Google has the market share. All they have to do is get the user experience right, like as they transition to make Gemini like the primary source of search. Okay. But I think three is actually the bigger one that I would, and I would probably encourage every single home service owner as you're listening to this to really process this because we're also focused on which AI is going to be the front runner, but we're not asking ourselves strategically how you could become the front runner. And I think that the next 2 to 3 years, what we're going to find is wearables determines who that Google is. And the best example I can give you is nobody in the world gave a shit about Meta and their AI intelligence until they released their Ray-Ban AI glasses, and now Oakley's doing it. And while it might not be glasses, we do know that Google just launched a version where you can now see a screen right in the lens. I think that was Google. Um, we obviously know that Apple caused a little ripple effect with the goggles, you know, pretty cool to have my monitor in thin air. But I do think that he or she who figures out the wearable space is probably the best bet that I'm willing to put my money on if anyone is going to dethrone Google. Think about market share with this device, Tim. Like, this is an iPhone. And when you look at how many people own this device, like, I won't lose this, right? So, what happens when this device is now embedded on the wrist, like the watch, but it's convenient? And I think when we figure that game out, whoever has the AI integration with the wearable, that's how you take over. You were going to say something.
yeah. I'm sick of my phone. I think a lot of people are. They feel like the screen is making us a little sick and addicted, frankly, to the dopamine. And I think like there's a lot of there will be a lot of positive if we can switch to a voice interface. And I think that um, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the whoever's on the wearable to position it that way, just to like position it as, are you sick of this dopamine addiction? I mean, I hope it's somebody that's not part of the current addiction paradigm. You know, the thing about, if it wasn't Apple, if it wasn't Facebook, because Facebook is definitely benefiting from that addiction.
For sure.
The little red dot in the alerts. You know, so I think ultimately it'd be awesome if it wasn't somebody that's currently had us by the throats.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I started to kind of generate this opinion is one, like I was born, it was hereditary, I'm partially deaf. And one thing that's cool about these hearing aids or Bluetooth, I can double tap them at any time and activate Siri. So it's kind of like this convenience of I don't have to take my phone out and I can essentially do math in thin air and get answers like without having to touch anything, right? And then when the meta glasses came out from one marketer to another, like I always try to be on the forefront of modern technology and try to think ahead about how society is going to adapt. And then because I love the home services, I ask myself, how is this going to impact, that the industry that has my heart? And when I had the meta glasses on, like just put them on, use them. Like anybody that hasn't done it, go get them, wear them for 2 weeks straight, non negotiable. Ask yourself how many things you can accomplish with those glasses, all right? And try to survive like in that environment. And I think that it would be kind of eye opening for you, like the amount of ideas that you would get. And there's a point here, right? Because these wearables, what happens when you start to do voice search and you activate it and you communicate? Like, does it tap it straight into AI? Or does it still, activate like a voice search, where it's
Yeah,
leveraging Google?
yeah, and yeah, you're right. Because basically, iPhones, they have so much power right now by what they do, and they're even trying to get it set up for ChatGPT to kind of replace Siri. Is like they make it kind of, I don't know if they're
That
fixing
was-
this.
Yeah, it was. It was a pain in the ass. I
Yeah,
remember.
so it's like they either need to like embrace hard or get out the way, a little bit on that Siri stuff because it wasn't good.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, but the problem is like, can you blame them? Nobody wants to embrace or go all in right now because everybody's trying to figure out where it's going to land. I think that's kind of why it's going to be a mess, and I mean, I think the next year, maybe two, it's going to be that way. Like you got all these companies, like you mentioned Bing earlier. Weren't they supposed to be like the key engine for GPT? And we all know it's using Google. I mean, if you actually start to explore device usage, like I would encourage anyone listening to this podcast to pull up Chat GPT in an app on 3 different phones. Do it on Apple, do it on Google Pixel, do it on Samsung, and watch the visuals that come out when you ask it to give you a map. They're all using different plugins and systems. Some of them will refer you to Google Maps. Some of them will show you some random third party. I can't remember what it's called. I have it like in a PowerPoint, when I taught in the past, but it's like a third party we've never heard of. And all it is it's just a graphic. Some of them can interact and engage with your actual reputation management profile, and some of them can't. It's just a visual graphic that wants you to understand relatively where the business is located, on a map. So like this gets interesting, right? Because all of these devices work differently. They're suggesting different things. And like at some point, this is why I say your SEO is like an attorney, because you're really going to need them. You're going to need an expert to understand where the connections lie and how to truly play the game because you're policing all the different systems.
So I was I like hearing about the elite aggregator thing. It's we have all these opinions, but then when like, hey, it's time to do this on your own. I bet like a bunch of stuff has come up. What else has come up? We're like, all right, it's time, and I'm feeling a little bit differently about this thing or that thing than what you've recommended in the past. You're like, oh, when it comes to rubber meets the road, I'm curious how my behavior is going to change because I actually,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, the one that comes to mind is pay per click. I mean, I've taught so much about it over the years, and like I love the tactical components and like its capabilities, but like what you're paying for a lead as a greenfielding brand new company is kind of scary, you know? And I think you also have to be thinking about your trade, like for you, you say, I think it's roofing, right? Out by at Minnesota. Yeah.
yes, sir.
And when you have that geographic element and the weather, and what your go-to-market strategy is on how you plan to play that game, whether it's retail, canvassing, door knocking, like,
Yeah, I'm going canvassing, but I'm going like super, super like tight area, like 100,000 people. I'm going to try to like get super branded, locally branded with
yeah.
like yard signs and like a podcast and all this stuff. It's just the stuff I know. So that's kind of my strategy. But
Well, I think that's smart. I mean, I would double down on that. I would back you in saying we have a similar mentality. Like for me, I told you about the Census Bureau assessment earlier, and that's why we do that, right? Because if I can look like the biggest garage door company in the smallest zip code and slowly start to build off of that and expand out, I think that you've got this momentum to play into versus trying to cover the entire area. Like, I mean, Phoenix is a big market, right? So I think that there's elements of that. But, where I was going with that is like your trade matters. Like for me, the majority of the clientele I represented, right, would be plumbers, it would be air conditioning, it would be electricians. And like a lot of these models would lean and get value out of memberships. And I think the hardest thing about PPC and where I was going with that, right, is like it becomes so expensive that you really do need to lean into multiple transactions to take the one step back, two step forward approach to actually generate memberships and start to pull in enough revenue from one customer to where you actually made money, right? Because an expensive conversion is pretty rough in the pay-per-click game, but at the same time, we're in a reactive buyer's market. We need to keep our job board full, and recruitment struggles is like obviously. I'd much rather try to figure out, what I need to charge for a job and how I can create a net margin that is ideal and pay my employees well, than dealing with recruitment shortages because I can't keep the job board full. So then one starts to come back and say, okay, well, let's talk about the pricing model. Like, what are you thinking about that? Obviously, in my world, I think, okay, well, my ambition going into this space, it's not to be the cheapest. I don't think anybody wants to be the most
yeah,
expensive,
but
but
at the beginning, most people benefit from that. At the beginning, most people benefit from being a little bit cheaper for a
yeah.
while.
Yeah, and for me, I think that knowing what I know about the digital space and that I don't want to buy leads and that I'm trying to get inbound, brand aware, like they've selected Good Golly Garage Doors, and they know who they're calling. Like for me, I'd much rather charge more and validate the marketing expense and create wealthy employees, and take that risk than the alternative, you know? That's one thing that I've thought about. I mean, there's a
Well,
lot
it's
of
just
things.
like in the customer experience, like, right? Like, I think that's been something I haven't had control of in the past because we know that you can get referrals if you kind of delight somebody. You like, and how does that play out into? I mean, I'm gonna have like little stuffed animals that I'm gonna give out to customers, that type of stuff where it's like I want to do fun things like that. And all that requires money. So you don't want to be the cheapest so you can do better stuff for the customer experience.
It's
You want to
exactly.
be I want that. I want to be the better experience, and that requires money.
Well, think about the strategic, things that we've discussed though on this call too, right? Like if you did the business plan in advance and you know what you want your margin to be and you're paying yourself first and you're building around that margin and you have a general idea what you want your employees to make, if you're going to do a commission-based model or if you're doing a base rate, like with bonus, like there's so many different options. But like when you put the business plan in place, it becomes a little bit easier to have a general assessment, right? Like, okay, yeah, I don't want to be the cheapest. Well, how do I not be the cheapest? Raise my rates, make sure that I'm priced accordingly. Okay, well, if I'm priced at this level, if I can do a comparison analysis and what I've heard or understand about the competition in the industry, like then I also understand I might need to be intentional. Now you're using PPC to get into areas like Fountain Hills here in the Valley where the home values are in millions of dollars. Like you're not going to have a ticket.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's like saying, "Hey, I wanna be the luxury, high-end brand." My average ticket's gonna be big because we're doing custom doors. Like, what do you want? Like, I can go and try and do a quantity game where I'm busting out all these, steel doors that are entry level, lower ticket, and try and do more jobs in a day because they're pretty simple. But like if you know what your strategy is, you're able to lean in to things like PPC or geo targeting, and some of those things and be more tactical about like where you want to do the work.
Hmm. Something, I mean, I'm curious to see how this plays out, but something I constantly preach is you want a tighter service area so that like word can spread and that your marketing money goes further. And I'm curious because I'm usually talking about like layering like 5, 10 types of marketing. Not when I say that, I don't have to like eat my own words because usually we're only like a couple methods of that, not like all of it. Um, and I'm curious if it plays out. And it's one of those things where it's like kind of a multi-year strategy because I'm essentially saying brand. I'm saying brand, and you keep on layering in different methods in a tighter area, and then you're the brand of choice, and you're referred more, and word spreads because multiple homeowners have used you, and somebody's like, oh, okay, that's the obvious choice. So that's the thing. I'm kind of like, I like I heard the nugget in there was using PPC to get into higher. That's smart. That's smart. Hey, I'm gonna look at this market that's high end homeowners. I'm gonna spend a little more because I have the context. Having context on the area, and I think that's something good that you can share with your marketing team. Like, where are the high end homes? I want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of triggers a thought. Like I'll share, I actually had to replace my garage door. Can't remember if it was like early this year or late last year. And I had this epiphany because my wife and I were able to afford a really nice door. And I'm like going through the catalog, I'm going through the customer experience. And of course this is like fun for me, right? Because as a digital marketer, I'm literally like taking mental snapshots and notes about how I'm feeling as I go through this entire process so that I could understand the buyer psychology. And I think the biggest takeaway that I took, and I think there's maybe some comparisons that you would use in roofing as well, is how much analysis have you done on HOA, right? Because it's interesting when you start to look at HOAs and you start to analyze your average ticket really is limited. Now, this is getting deep. It's tactical. It's in the weeds. But I also know that Census Bureau data is accessible. I also know that AI can do some of this homework for us at like ridiculous speeds.
Yeah,
Uh,
what do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean by the HOA? Like you're saying the
I'll,
ticket
I'll, I'll,
sizes
I'll
go
tell
down when you're
you,
working with these bigger organizations?
I'll explain it this way. I don't live in an HOA. Now, in an HOA, they have rules, right? And requirements, colors, like what type of door, what type of roof, shingle, right? The homes need to match. But even in a non-HOA where I didn't have that rule, I could have put in like a $20,000 crazy like wooden custom door, like whatever, and when I started analyzing the nice door that I wanted to put in, I instantly stopped. And my ticket came down probably 5 grand because what I realized is every single home on the street has a classic steel door. Whose home are you gonna rob? You know, like like things like that. Like I don't want my house to stand out. Homeowners are conscious about that, and that's just maybe me, but like still, even if you're not worried about theft like that, you still also kind of don't want that one house like on the entire street where like in Arizona you got all these homes next to each other. You know what I mean? So like it's weird. It's weird when you've got this modern conventional door with like these odd side panels and the rest of these homes built in '88 have like classic steel doors. Like so for us, the actual learning lesson in this whole process was depending on like the actual surroundings of the environment when you're dealing with any type of product that is external of the home and it's aesthetic for the general public to see, I do believe that your average ticket is impacted. And when you start to think about that, you say get to know your surroundings, get to know your area, right? We talked about pay per click. All right, well, that's kind of an interesting, super tactical approach. Like if I'm going to spend this much and my average cost per lead is blank in this particular neighborhood where I know the home value is what it is and that the majority of the homes are dealing with regular shingles, not clay, not all these other wild things, that I think have come out like because we have a lot of clay tiles in Arizona. We have also general, shingles and things like that. But that stuff, I think once you start to really do some data and analysis and you get tactical on it, like you can do some pretty wild things that are different. And that's the marketing mind in me. Like when you take a white collar, journey and you know what type of access you have data to and how tactical you can be, gets kind of interesting when you start to think about the creative ways that you can approach the market. But I do, the last thing I'll say on that topic, Tim, is that I think it would also be interesting if the same way we say we want our employees to be rich and get their dreams, like for me, these technicians that come in here, like I don't look at this and like how much money can Good Golly generate. I'm like, how can I get, Steve that vacation, to Jamaica that he's always talked about. And when I lock in and I get passionate and like I'm like, dude, I want to get you that. And I talk about it all the time about how we're going to get you that. And I'm like legit trying to be here, figure that out. Like that stuff gets me going. So why don't you do the same thing for the homeowners? Like if you're going to take your roofing company, right? Like you're spending a lot of time thinking about, you know, the business, but how much time are you thinking about them? And what I mean by that is take the marketer hat that you've got, but don't make it about the revenue. Make it about the influence. Like if you changed your perspective going into the home and you said, what can I give? What can I do that is going to cause this homeowner to recommend or share or just advertise me? Imagine if I went into every home and I said, hey, I will give you, I'm making this up off the fly. I don't even know if it would actually work. So I'm going to give you $20 off to simply just make a post on Facebook that, you use Good Golly Garage Doors. You don't even have to say if it was a good experience or a bad one. I just want you to, post this image. I mean, imagine that, right? Like what you're doing is you're creating road warriors. Like there are people that are going out and they're free, putting your brand out in front of the eyes. Like in my mind, if I went into every home thinking about how I can get them to talk about me 3 times, I think that's a little bit of a different game than me, so focused on the actual transaction and the dollar value itself. Like I'd love to figure out how to price accordingly to get those things.
Yeah, I think you're smart, man. You're so smart, and I think part of it is that understanding of how much cost per acquisition is, right? Like a cost to acquire a customer. If that's large, then how are we going to get more customers out of the customers we've got? And I think just being in this mode, understanding how expensive it all is, and like everyone finds that out eventually, but you're like, there's no real hack, right? We know none of us. There's no way to get that cost of acquisition down to something that's super fun to look at.
Yeah, I think people just are trying to look for the shortcuts all the time, like they just want to get as many leads as they can, as fast as they can, as easily as they can. And, I think one of the greatest lessons I ever learned from Gary Vee, like in our partnership with him, there is no better value than compounding word of mouth. So if you spent as much time sitting down trying to think about how to get people to talk about you as you did trying to like get the sale, you'd probably actually blow up the way that you really hoped you would from the start. Like I'm more focused on thinking about how do I get people to constantly talk about Good Golly. We just happen to fix garage doors. That's it. Like we are not a garage door company. And every employee that comes here will know that. Like we are a customer service company and we are improving the quality of life for these homeowners. Like that's it. Like how can we make your day better? We just happen to do it by helping you with the garage door, but we're looking for every single way when we get into the home to actually help you. I mean, that could be in, referring, hey, I noticed you've got this issue with your water heater while I was fixing your door. I actually know somebody who does that. You want me to text them for you? There's no upside for me in that, unless there's obviously like a referral program or a rev share. But, like, I'm looking for every
Who are you
opportunity.
referring over there? Hobayaka?
Those are my good buddies, right?
Yeah.
The whole industry knows at this point that
Yeah, you guys,
we're practically
it's
family.
cute. It's it's a little bit of bromance. I like that guy. Um, yo, you're on a roll here, so I hate to cut you short, but I think you've given a lot of value. I think it's just the creativity of a marketer going into this, and it's fun. I mean, it's a good sign for garage doors as an industry that you're joining because you've assessed a lot of market trends and you've decided this is a really good opportunity. I think that that's awesome. So Garage Doors should be grateful to have you. And I think that it's a huge sign that that industry's got some good things going on. Appreciate you taking the time. Where can people check out you and Good Golly?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking, and first off, I got to give some love to, our business partner. Jason Henderson came from the HVAC world. And, as much as I want to say I chose Garage Doors, I didn't. Like, this was something he chose, and he was a former client like many, many years ago. So we've had a connection, and it was wild that, how we kind of reconnected. It was a total, like, it was God's work, 100%. And, I think that I also want to say this is a growing brand, like we were out there looking for operators. It's not a franchise, like it is an individually owned and operated every location. And this is what it's about. It's about finding operators throughout the entire nation, to come in and to bring into our network and our vision, take Good Golly, to scale. So I would
Can
love.
they have an existing garage door company and then swap out the brand, or is
Do a
that how?
rebrand. I tell people I'm down to have a conversation, but it's we're figuring this thing out as we go. And I think at the end of the day, like we're never gonna rule anything out. Like Jason and I, like we always try to have an open book and talk to anyone and help
But
people.
it might be like a person who had a different type of home service business that want to jump in on this.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, some of our existing locations operate trades businesses separately. And this is just a sister business, that has opened up totally. At this point, what I tell people is if you're interested in opening up a garage door business in this country, you should call me. And if you need digital marketing advice, they could just call you.
Hey,
So MikeVenidis.com. This is something, it's a community environment. It's backed like MikeVenidis.com. There's a form there you can fill out. Like it will go directly to me. I don't have anyone managing it. That is a community that's currently being built where I give back to the trades by simply just trying to teach high level tactical strategies, things like we've talked about. Like I don't charge for it. It's not consulting based. It's just good deeds. So that's one way you can reach out or find me on social media platforms. I'm on every single one of them. And, I just genuinely want to help people. So that's how you can find me. All right.
awesome. Appreciate you being on, brother. Podcast is put on by hookagency.com, Hook Agency all over social. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next year of your journey. I hope I get to talk to you another time in the next year and just say, how's it going, and learn from you a little bit more. Appreciate your time, bro.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Many homes suffer from inefficient HVAC systems due to leaky ducts, leading to uneven room temps, lost airflow, and higher energy costs. AeroSeal's innovative sealant technology targets and repairs leaks, improving airflow and efficiency. Increase your customer satisfaction, increase sales, and offer a unique market advantage. Become a leader in HVAC efficiency. AeroSeal.com.
I can't commend Hook Agency enough on just the experience. We're talking about plumbing experience, but the experience we've had overall working with your team members on this project, they really draw out ideas that otherwise I didn't even think of, which is incredible. So thank you guys for being a valued partner of the Family Plumber. I really appreciate that.